I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. Hope you guys are staying cool out there. Man, is it hot in Michigan. We do have 4 total segments that we'll be going over in today's podcast episode. Segment 1, we'll be talking about Jalen Duren. We had a front office executive talk about Jalen Duren. We have a video that will be playing on screen if you're watching live on YouTube, and we'll also be reading the full quote from this front office executive. Segment 2, we'll be getting into NBA offseason grades from The Athletic. Which grade did the Detroit Pistons have? It might actually surprise you guys. Segment 3, some Team USA news. A member of the Detroit Pistons is going to be a part of Team USA. We'll be getting into that. And segment 4, fun little topic I think we can discuss. Top 30 in 2030. Bleacher Report made their list. So a lot of lists in this podcast episode today. So it might be a little bit more of a lengthy one just because we'll be going over each team with the letter gradings from The Athletic, and then each player in the top 30 in 2030, according to Bleacher Report. But let's get straight into the Jalen Duren stuff. Now, obviously, we have tried to just keep up with the Jalen Duren saga in this restricted free agency. There's been a lot of information that has been poured out, across like Twitter, across social media in general. And, there's been like what Duren's side wants with, the money that they're seeking. There's been the Pistons side that did get initially reported last week by Clutch Points. Now, this is actually the first time we've heard someone from the Detroit Pistons talk about Jalen Duren, and it is none other than front office executive member.
We're happy to have him. I know Trajan is excited. JB loves him. He's ours, and hopefully we get things worked out.
Yeah, you said you know what he can be. What can he be?
Well, again, he's 22, 6'11", 7-foot kid. Again, he can be. He showed during the regular season where he could dominate, protect the paint, big time lob threat. I think the things he'll learn is when teams change up on him during the playoffs, when they bring that extra defender behind him, how to handle that. When he catches the ball in the short row pocket, how to make those plays and make those decisions. And as Eddie knows, those things are hard to learn as a young kid.
So there's a lot I want to kind of just dissect with what Dwane Casey said. And I'll put the full quote if you guys didn't really understand. Sometimes it's harder to understand when people talk and completely understand it. That's why we made this graphic. So Dwane said, quote, "He's ours. We're happy to have him. I know Trajan is excited. JB loves him. He's ours. And, hopefully we get things worked out." That's the first thing I do want to discuss with you guys with this first quote from Dwane Casey. Not that he's ours. We're happy to have him. Hopefully we can get things worked out. That to me is a little bit like cautionary, just because it's like, hopefully we can get things worked out. Because right now it's a stalemate between Trajan Langdon, the Pistons front office, what they want to give him. Reportedly $35 million is the highest that they want to go. And what what Jalen Duren's representation, wants from the Detroit Pistons, which is, max contract, kind of like around that area. So Casey's saying, hopefully, we can get the things sorted out. Now, the second part of this quote that he said is he's 22, 6'11", 7-foot kid. Again, he showed during the regular season where he can dominate and protect the paint. It's one thing I actually disagree with. Big time lob threat. I agree with that 100%. I think things he'll learn is when teams change up on him during the playoffs, when they bring an extra defender behind him, how to handle that, how he can catch the ball in the short row passes, how he can make those plays and make those decisions. And as Eddie knows, he's referring to, I believe, Eddie Johnson that does NBA radio, I believe. Those things are hard to learn as a young kid. So a lot of information with the Jalen Duren from Dwane Casey. Now, you may be wondering, Anthony, it's Dwane Casey. Why should we care like what Dwane Casey has to say? He's the former head coach of the Detroit Pistons during an era that they didn't win a whole lot of basketball games. Outside of the 1 year where they went 44 or 44, 41 and 41, excuse me, and got bounced by the Bucks. Why this holds a little bit more weight to me is Dwane Casey did get elevated to a front office role. In his first year, it was a lot of scouting, it was a lot of going to college games, reporting back. Um, Past 2 seasons, last season and this season included, he got elevated to senior advisor. Now, the last senior advisor we had, and you guys probably remember this name before we got Troy Weaver, was Ed Stefanski. Ed Stefanski would report to Tom Gores because we didn't have a general manager at the time before we hired Troy Weaver. So Dwane Casey is a senior advisor, and he reports to Trajan Langdon, Tom Gores, and the Detroit Pistons front office. So him saying, he's ours, we're happy to have him, Trajan likes him, JB loves him, hopefully we can get things worked out. The hopefully thing to me is just a pretty cautionary, because obviously restricted free agency can be very tricky. I do believe the Pistons still hold all the cards. They hold all the cards, in my personal opinion, because there are no teams in free agency that have max money that could offer them the 4 years, 177. I think that's one reason why they hold all the cards. I think another reason why the Pistons hold all the cards is because he's a restricted free agent. He's not unrestricted. So Duren could have left in free agency if he wanted to. Pistons hold his bird rights. So he's a restricted free agent. So I think that's another reason why they do hold the cards, and they've made it known we have no interest in any type of sign-in trade scenarios with any team. That includes Sacramento, that included the Los Angeles Lakers, and whoever was reportedly interested in Jalen Duren. Only team that has somewhat of some cap space is Brooklyn, and they couldn't even offer Jalen Duren a max. So I did want to talk about the Dwane Casey aspect of it. That is the first time we've heard a front office executive member talk about Duren outside of Trajan Langdon. And something else for you guys to kind of consider, because I do a lot of observing, and it might be something, it might be nothing. This is the first time that I can remember watching Summer League, and we have one more Summer League game tomorrow, where you have not seen JB Bickerstaff or Trajan Langdon in interviews with the play-by-play commentary. Now, yesterday's game, we had Abuka Okori's former coach in college, Kyle Smith, talk about him. There's been no Pistons, no one affiliated with the organization doing these halftime interviews. I mean, you saw it last year with Trajan Langdon, talk about his team, talk about, bringing in, certain players. Saw it with JB Bickerstaff. I haven't seen anything with them getting interviewed while the game was happening. Now, there have been a lot of weird interviews with Amazon Prime, like interviewing Max Crosby, just glazing James Harden for like 5 minutes straight yesterday. That was definitely very pointless by Amazon, but you guys kind of get my point. There have been no Detroit Pistons interviews with the organization from Trajan Langdon, JB Bickerstaff, or anyone else really, during games. So I think the big reason for that is they don't want questions about JD, because as a, play-by-play, call it commentator, or just even a journalist for that matter, that's probably the first question that they're going to ask. And I don't really think the Pistons want to have that out in the air on like live TV. So something to pay attention to with the Casey aspect, and then the Summer League aspect as well, with the Detroit Pistons not doing any type of interviews during the game. Now, I wanted to get into the team grades. Now, The Athletic posts these every year. Each team gets a letter grade from them. We went ahead and made a graphic. So I'll read the Detroit Pistons grade first, since this is a Detroit Pistons podcast. And then we'll go through each and every team with the letter grade that they did receive. And I'll kind of give my opinions on it, if I agree with it or not. So the Pistons got a B letter grade from The Athletic, which I think a B I've seen some people say F. I've seen some people say, D, C plus, C minus. Me personally, I would probably say so far this offseason to me is like a solid C plus. Again, that's just my opinion. And I think a reason why I have a C plus is I'm just a little bit underwhelmed, but I do also have to acknowledge you did address 3-point shooting, which was a huge weakness last year. You did address a secondary ball handler. I know Abuka Corey's had two really bad stinkers in these summer league games, but I know the kid will be all right. He just has to get in the weight room and get a little bit stronger. Everything else from the kid, I think you do like. He's able to get to his spots, get, position in the paint at will. He's very quick out there. But, you did address, two things that the Pistons did lack. We just don't have that secondary star power that I think a lot of us really wanted. But Pistons going to be in this letter grade so far. So the incomplete grades that they do have, and we'll go through these, it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. They would give the Cavs an A minus if they land LeBron, D without, which is kind of wild. I mean, Cavs haven't really done anything. I mean, James Harden still hasn't signed. I think he's waiting for LeBron. Dean Wade's in Philly, so they haven't really done anything personally. There's talks about Max Strus possibly getting dealt too, so they could lose a few of their high level role players. So they get an incomplete grade. The Pelicans also get an incomplete grade, which personally, the only thing that the Pelicans have done, and I want to talk about this because this is funny as hell, and we'll get back into the team grades. I know this is just going to be a rambling, going down a rabbit hole, but the Pelicans signed DeAndre Jordan, which I was like, at the time, I was like, that's a veteran, someone that they had in their locker room. Like, cool. Then there's details over the past 48 hours, you guys, that the Pelicans weren't aware that DeAndre Jordan actually qualifies for more money playing in the NBA for over 10 plus years. So his veteran minimum goes up a little bit because I guess there are certain like plateaus and criteria you can hit if you're in the NBA and you do sign for vets minimums. Like he was able to sign for a little bit more. That's not where it's funny and it gets interesting. So the Pelicans were unaware that they signed DeAndre Jordan for more than 1 year. The front office just didn't know the rules. And who's in their front office right now? Troy Weaver and Joe Dumars. They were not aware that they signed this guy on a 2-year deal worth up to $8 million. So, like around like a $4 million vet minimum. They thought they were just going to sign him for a vet minimum, for around the $2 million range. They didn't understand that he was going to get paid more money, and they didn't know that he was going to be under contract for 2 years. That to me is hilarious. Now, like the team grade's incomplete. Like just that alone to me probably warrants an F, just because you didn't even know the rules. And there was a statement that came out today that like they didn't want to lose him. There are other teams that we're going to pry him away from New Orleans. Like, I don't buy that. Like, nothing against DeAndre Jordan. Good player, but at this stage of his career, I don't even really know what he provides you outside of just like a locker room vet, being a grown up in the room. But just that story, reading it from Pelicans beat reporters, even they're like, yeah, that's not a good look that you don't even know the rules in your own front office. But funny. If you're a Piston fan, we can laugh now, but like obviously we didn't have any blunders like that in our front office. But you have two former Pistons execs down in New Orleans right now, and it's just kind of funny if you do ask me. But the last incomplete grade is the Toronto Raptors. That's another one where it's like the Kawhi thing is obviously looming. There's stuff that came out today with the aspiration stuff, and I thought it was like NBA Central, but I'm seeing the Athletic report it, and like there were like images of Kawhi. Like he almost looked like, if you guys have ever watched Marvels, like I think his name is like Groot or something like that. Looked like a tree figure. If you guys like followed like the aspirations, like carbon what was it like planting trees basically. Kind of made it like 10 times funnier. So the Raptors get an incomplete grade because what's going to happen with Kawhi Leonard? Like if the league actually finds a little bit more evidence and there's no Kawhi Leonard, the trade gets rescinded or something like that, or the Clippers have to send some picks back or in the deal, whatever it may be, because whoever does trade for a Kawhi has to deal with the consequences if they find anything with this aspirations cap circumvention thing that's been going on for like the past year, it seems like. So all those teams get incomplete grades. Cavs, obviously, I understand it. They haven't done anything. Pelicans, I think, should have an F. And then the Raptors, they're waiting to see what the league does with the Kawhi Leonard situation. So we're going to start with the teams that got the best letter grades and then the teams that got the worst letter grades. 76ers, I really can't disagree with it. I think they have had an A-plus offseason. Getting off of Paul George's contract for Jaylen Brown should just be a win in itself. You're able to swing Dean Wade, who is a really good, just veteran um, uh, guy that is like analytically, if you look at the numbers, he's a really good player. Look, a really good player. And I think he'll be really great for them off the bench. I don't know if he starts, probably a bench player. They were able to swing, I believe, Anthony Simons as well, who's a really high volume 3-point shooter. Their draft pick, who we saw this past week, LeBaron Philon, or last week, I should say, he's a bucket getter. I mean, that kind of probably just makes up for the Jared McCain blunder with OKC. So they get an A+, only team by the Athletic to get an A+ letter grade, which, hey, I agree with it. The Miami Heat A. I guess they're getting an A just for getting off of Tyler Hero and trading for Giannis. Man, we didn't even get to talk about the Tyler Hero stuff, man. Like, Bam Adebayo's is punching him. He gets an interview. He's got a shiner on his eye. There's been so much drama that I haven't been able to talk about with you guys because we've been doing like these post game podcasts, and it completely just slipped my mind. But as soon as I saw Miami there with the A, I was like, yeah, that's kind of actually funny. So they get an A, I guess, for making a swing trade for Giannis. I still think they do need to fill out their roster a little bit better. Dallas gets an A as well. Now, Dallas has had an interesting offseason. They have made a lot of trades. I think one of their weaknesses was power forward. Trading for Santi Aldama, I think, does kind of relieve that. You still have PJ Washington. Morez Johnson looks like a phenomenal pick, brand new head coach. And you have Cooper Flagg still. You don't have any more, future first, but I think they're okay with that. Kyrie's coming back. So Dallas is looking like a team that is going to try to compete for a Western Conference playoff spot. And I think if they're healthy, they're one of the better teams in the NBA. And you have a very innovative, offensive-minded coach in Dusty May, which I'll be really interested to see how he does in the NBA ranks. I do see some Michigan fans a little bit salty, hoping that he ends up like John Beilein. I don't think he's going to have a John Beilein type of crash out, calling his players slugs. If you guys get that reference, you're OG subscribers. I still can't believe he did that in Cleveland, which that seems like so long ago. Washington Wizards, A-. Drafting Darren Peterson, sure. You signed Trae Young to this massive extension, which I don't like that contract for them personally. I think it's going to be harder to move. You have Anthony Davis. You have Alex Sarr. You have just like this plethora of young talent surrounding, all these vets. Chris Middleton went back to Washington. So you have vets. You have so many young guys on the team like Trey Johnson, AJ DeBonsa, Keontae George. Oh, excuse me. Keshawn George. I said Keontae George. Keshawn George. They have a lot of young talent on the roster, which I think they'll be fine. Charlotte gets a B+. I felt like you could honestly, I mean, maybe some people look at Charlotte and like they kind of just offloaded on LaMelo Ball, which, those draft picks would actually be pretty good depending on what happens with Anthony Edwards, because you never know. And then they offload on Miles Bridges, and they have just stockpiled a bunch of picks. kind of taking like the OKC Thunder approach. And you just have this young core of guys with Con Knipple, um, Ryan Kalkbrenner. I'm just trying to think of some of their young core guys. They have a lot of guys that I think I'll like, but I'm not really sure if they're a playoff team though. Like I like the run that they had. Like they had an incredible run last year. They're one of the hottest teams, after, a slow start. Like, they had a play-in tournament game against the Miami Heat, beat them, but by the time it was to play the Magic, they kind of ran out of gas. But, I thought the Hornets did pretty well, but all the reports were saying that they wanted to get all the bad influences out of the locker room with Miles Bridges and LaMelo Ball, but they get a B plus. Rockets get a B plus. Rockets to me, I feel like have been pretty quiet this offseason. They made a couple of moves, but I guess the Spurs get a B plus as well. Tobias Harris, I think will be a really good addition for them. They still have Wemby, they still have like De'Aaron Fox, Castle, Dylan Harper. Like Spurs are still just going to be a juggernaut in the Western Conference. So not too like I should say I don't really like. I think you could have the Spurs at kind of like A minus range if you want, but B plus is fine. The Jazz B plus. I mean, they got a crap load of picks for Walker Kessler, which I mean, I can't believe the Lakers paid all that, but hey, that's the Lakers. They're just trying to maximize Luka's window. They had a good draft there, and Peterson looks like a hell of a player. I mean, you can have a backcourt of um, him with Keontae George, which I think will be interesting. You traded for Jaren Jackson Jr. last deadline, still have Lauri Markkanen. So I think they'll be okay. Atlanta Hawks, they got to be. I think the Hawks have kind of been somewhat quiet. I do like Kingston Flemings for them a lot. I think he's going to be their point guard of the future, even with the emergence of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think Kingston Fleming has all the tools to be a two-way guard for them in the future. So I really like that for them. Nets get a beat as well. They have been pretty active this offseason, trading Nick Claxton to the Bulls, getting Julius Randle, but now they don't really have a center. They drafted another point guard in Mikal Brown Jr., who I think is going to be their point guard of the future as well. He's a really good player. I like it. The Bulls get a B2. Caleb Wilson looks like he's going to be their franchise player. They still have Matas Pizzalis. They have a whole new regime, new coaches, new front office. They're going through a rebuild. They're transitioning through a rebuild. It'll be interesting to see like how they look with the new coach over there. But I do like a B grade for the Bulls. Lakers get a B. Lakers offseason to me was underwhelming just from the aspect of like, yeah, you traded for Walker Kessler. Yeah, you do all these things, but like outside of him, like all the free agent signings, I was kind of like, that's really supposed to compete with OKC and the Thunder. Like I don't really think it is. I don't think you have Luca, but I don't really think it's really going to matter personally. So they're going to be Wolves going to be. I mean, you could argue they should be higher just for trading for LaMelo Ball. In my personal opinion, they get off Julius Randle. They get off Naz Reid, which Naz was really good for them, but I do think they're a little bit weaker in the front court. But they still have Rudy Gobert. They have Berenjay as well, who's a really young. Interesting center who I think is really going to pop, getting more opportunities this season. But I think you could definitely make a case for them to at least be in the B plus range. Knicks get a B. Knicks haven't really done anything either. They have re-signed a couple of their guys. Mitchell Robinson left in free agency. You did sign Andre Drummond, which I do think, from the rebounding aspect, you will get similar rebounding production. But the defense is a big drop off between Mitchell Robinson and Andre Drummond, even though Andre Drummond is a quarter three specialist now in later part of his career, a little bit better of a free throw shooter, but I could totally see teams hack a drum during the playoffs and during the regular season. If he's out there, he's been through it before, so he'll know what to expect. OKC, they get a B. Obviously, they had to offload on some contracts and Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe. They did do a contract extension with Isaiah Hartenstein. They were able to draft Bennett Sturts, which I think is an excellent pick for them. I think he'll fit in with like a glove, but they still have their core nucleus with SGA, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, all those guys over there. I think they'll be great. The Grizzlies be like that. This is where I think the Grizzlies should actually be closer to the B plus A minus range. The Grizzlies, to me, you guys, I think actually had a really good offseason. Like a really good offseason considering where they were at, the season that they had. You draft Cameron Boozer. You're able to swing for Isaiah Stewart. I'm pretty sure they got a first-round pick for Santi Aldama, even though it's a 2031 that belongs to the Golden State Warriors. That actually might turn into something nice for them over the next 4 years. Yes, they traded Santi Aldama and they traded Isaiah Stewart, which I think will be a really good culture fit for them. I like their offseason. I really do. Their second-year player, I'm trying to think of his name right now, Cedric Cowherd. He's just been eating in the summer league. Like I think he's too good for the summer league right now, but I think they should definitely be in the B plus A minus range. I really like their offseason. Celtics get a C. I think they get a C just for trading Jaylen Brown and taking on Paul George's contract. Yeah, you got 2 first, but I mean, like, I guess you feel like your window's closed. You feel like the contract is too big and you wanted to kind of retool a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like their offseason to me, like about if I'm a Celtics fan, I'm just pissed off because like Jason Tatum's gonna have more time this offseason to recoup and get back to his old self. Jaylen Brown carried them to a number 2 seed. Yeah, you got bounced by Philly. But man, like a C for them, like their offseason so far, I'd be really underwhelmed. Pacers get a C too. I think they'll be fine personally with getting Tyrese Halliburton. You know, you get Zubac back. Obviously, you lose the stretch big and Miles Turner to the Bucks, but I think the Pacers will be in the mix in the Eastern Conference. Clippers get a C. Clippers have kind of had like a meh offseason. Like, yeah, you get Rui Hachimura. You obviously kind of retooled. You trade Kawhi. You get a crap little picks. You get Grady Dick, Brandon Ingram. Like, I think they'll be competitive, but, you know, so far, I mean, like maybe you could elevate them to a B. I think a C is a little bit low for them personally. It's not like an offseason where you're like wowed by it, but I don't think it's like an average offseason for them. I think they've done a pretty good job of just kind of stockpiling with, you know, getting their more first round picks back and, you know, getting some players that can kind of just like be placeholders for the time being until you kind of get a franchise guy again. Kings, C. Kings kind of just like, yeah, you get Darius Acuff. Off season's kind of been like all over the place. Tried to get Duren, that didn't happen. Waved DeMar DeRozan. It's like, okay, like what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Blazers, most confusing offseason I've ever seen. I thought they were going to be in play for Giannis after the trade for John Morant. And then you got the coach saying, yeah, John Morant actually might come off the bench. Mike Conori said that, which a lot of people in Portland are like, okay. And you still have Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson and Drew Holiday. You traded Jeremy Grant to the Grizzlies, so you get off the Jeremy Grant money, but you have so many plethora of guards now. Their offseason's been kind of weird to me. Milwaukee C, to me, like, yeah, they offloaded on Giannis. They do have a team that will be, I think, they'll try. I'll just say that they'll try out there. They're probably not going to win a whole lot of games. They're probably not going to make the playoffs, but they'll give an effort out there at the most. Nate Ament looks like a miss, but Burries looks like a really good pick for them. Golden State, C. Now, if they get LeBron, they probably go up to an A, but it sounds like LeBron wants to go out and leave the West and come to the East. But Yaxel Lendenberg looks like a really good pick for them. He's definitely going to be a contributor, even though Steve Kerr doesn't like rookies. Nuggets D, I think it's warranted. They really haven't done anything. Still trying to deal with the Peyton Watson restricted free agency. Like they really haven't done shit. The Magic D, again, yeah, you get a new head coach in Sean Sweeney, but you haven't really done anything in free agency either. And it's probably pretty difficult to do anything when you're that much invested into the core that you have in like Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Desmond Bain. But Sean Sweeney should be a really good coach for them. Want to get into our third segment. That was a long one, you guys. Again, like I think I said C+ for the Pistons. Athletic said B. I will acknowledge they did address 3-point shooting and more secondary ball handling with Ibuka, Corey. But I've just kind of been, I want more. Maybe that's a little bit selfish of me. Like as a Piston fan, I'd like to see a little bit more from the Detroit Pistons, and whether that's like maybe one more small move or a medium-sized move, or maybe a possible trade, because I believe right now you're at 16 roster spots out of 15. So either you're waiving somebody or you are making a trade. So we'll have to wait and see. Segment 3, I want to get into some Team USA stuff. So we know that the Pistons have had Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren compete in Team USA Select. It was reported by Shams Charania that JB Bickerstaff will be added to Erik Spoelstra's national staff as an assistant coach for Team USA, which I think this is a really big honor for JB Bickerstaff to be named an assistant coach on Team USA. I also believe Mark Dagnall from OKC, that's the other NBA coach that will be an assistant. And then there was a college coach that I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but they will be assistants under Erik Spoelstra. And it's a pretty good probability that Cade Cunningham will be starting in the Olympics for Team USA. I could not even project to tell you what a starting 5 could possibly be. I think the only players that I could for sure say off the top of my head that could be starters is Bam Adebayo, because Spo's going to want his guy. He's going to bring Bam with him. And Cade Cunningham, JB might make a case, and Grant Hill might make a case. Hey, let's get Cade out there. Grant Hill is in charge of Team USA and anything Team USA. So I think Cade has a pretty good chance of making Team USA. You're going to have JB Bickerstaff as an assistant coach for that. So it's cool to see, man. It's cool to see the Pistons might have 2 representatives from their team make Team USA, Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. I know we've talked about in previous podcast, Asar Thompson, the last time there was any type of news with that, he wants to try to play for Team Jamaica. Now, Team Jamaica would probably consist of Isaiah Stewart, the Thompson twins, Norm Powell, pretty sure VJ's Bahamas, excuse me. I'm trying to think of the other Jamaican guard. It's another young kid. I can't think of him off the top of my head, but I don't think Asar is going to be competing for Team USA. He'll probably do Team Jamaica for the qualifiers to try to make the Olympics and make it to the rounds. But just wanted to touch on the JB Bickerstaff aspect, because you'll probably see at least Cade Cunningham in the Olympics going there with JB Bickerstaff. But want to go into segment 3, our final segment, and man, these lists are giving us content, and it's top 30 in 2030. Now, I want to take a sip of water before we do get into the final segment. So give me about 10 seconds and then we'll get into it. So this list comes from Bleacher Report, you guys. And I'll say this. They're very good at stirring the pot. They get people talking. So we're going to go over each player in this list, top 30 in 2030. So number 1, no surprise, Victor Wembanyama, number 1. Number 2, Luka Doncic from the Los Angeles Lakers. 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the OKC Thunder. He comes in at 3. Nikola Jokic at number 4. Anthony Edwards at number 5. Cooper Flagg at number 6. Pistons Cade Cunningham at number 7. Cameron Boozer from the Grizzlies, draft pick this year, coming in at number 8. Number 9, Tyrese Maxey from the 76ers. Number 10, LaMelo Ball from the Minnesota Timberwolves. That is going to take some getting used to because he's been with the Hornets for so long, but new member of the Timberwolves. Number 11, Darren Peterson from the Utah Jazz. Number 12, AJ DeBonta from the Wizards. 13, Scotty Barnes from the Raptors. 14, Giannis Antetokounmpo from the Miami Heat. 15, Dylan Harper from the San Antonio Spurs. 16, Tyrese Halliburton from the Indiana Pacers. 17, Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics. Or 17, I'm sorry. 17 for Jason Tatum. 18, Jalen Johnson from the Atlanta Hawks. 19, Denny Avdia from the Trailblazers. 20, Jet Holmgren to the OKC Thunder. 21 and 22, Alperen Sengun from the Rockets, and Amen Thompson from the Rockets. Amen's at 21, Alperen Sengun's at 22, Evan Mobley at 23, Jalen Brunson at 24, Con Knippel at 25, Franz Wagner at 26, Stephon Castle 27, Jalen Williams 28, Caleb Wilson 29 from the Bulls, and Paolo Banchero number 30 from the Orlando Magic. So I think this list is going to get a lot of people going. And I just want to say this before we kind of like go a little bit deeper in this list. There is like probably an 80% chance 90% of those players are not on those respective teams. Just the way the CBA is structured, there's a good chance a lot of these players are on brand new teams, which sucks the way it's structured. It does. But Cade comes in at like, oops, wrong one. Cade comes in at number 7, right? And above him, Cooper Flagg, which I like Cooper Flagg, but I don't know if he's going to be a top 6 player by 2030. I think top 10 for sure. I think the rookie year he had, you saw the flashes, had 30-point games, had 40-point games. Kid's going to be great. Anthony Edwards, top 5. I don't really have a problem with that. You know, Jokic, Shea, Luka, Wemby. Like I think you could make a case. Cade's at least in the conversation with Anthony Edwards. I think Cooper Flagg is a little bit. He's rated too high in my opinion. I think by some national sites. I know Bleacher Report really likes Cooper Flagg. Cameron Boozer at number 8 was actually shocking out of this whole draft class. Like he's the highest draft pick right here at number 8. Like Darren Peterson's like right below him. AJ DeBonsa's at 12. It's surprising to me that they think Cameron Boozer is going to be a better player than Darren Peterson and AJ DeBonsa in the next 4 years. So they really believe in the potential. But there's some other players on here. Like I think Asar could definitely, squeak into the top 30. Kind of in range near his brother. Now, obviously, that is dependent if Star Thompson does develop a jump shot, if he gets better at the free throw line, handles get a little bit tighter. But I think Asar could definitely have a, at least a real conversation about, getting within range of, at least top 20 in the next 4 years. I definitely believe in the potential. I know some people don't believe in the jump shot. They call me crazy. I see you guys in the comment section because I believe in Ron and Asar's trajectory of possibly becoming shooters, but that's what the comment section is for. I welcome you guys to call me names in the comment section. I welcome it. Like you guys know, like I always welcome everyone's opinions. I might not have the same opinions as you, but that's what makes doing podcasts fun. That's what makes just making content fun overall. But before we do say goodbye to you guys, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And we have NBA futures out with it being the off season. And right now we have 2026-2027 NBA Eastern Conference first overall seed odds. And they have the Knicks as the odds-on favorite. Makes sense. They just won the championship. Plus 310 for them for their odds. Boston Celtics plus 430, which is kind of objectively hilarious that they have the second best odds, but you got publications like The Athletic giving them a C+ grading, so make it make sense. They're the plus 430 with their odds. Detroit Pistons right below the Boston Celtics, plus 450. So, Vegas thinks that the Pistons are going to have a good season. Obviously, they got a B grade from The Athletic for their offseason so far, but, they think the Pistons will have a good season. Cleveland is right below the Pistons at a plus 750, followed by the Philadelphia 76ers at a plus 850, Toronto Raptors at a plus 950, Miami Heat plus 1,200, Orlando Magic plus 1,700, same with the Pacers at plus 1,700, the Atlanta Hawks plus 2,200, Charlotte Hornets at a plus 5,000, and the Washington Wizards, they're like, yeah, Yeah. Place a bet on Washington because it's free money for us. 17,500. That's how Vegas is like, yeah, like Washington will be improved, but number one seed, absolutely not. Like that is just craziness if you were to do that. But a lot of these futures, like I see the Pistons like ranked pretty high, like in like 50-win seasons, first overall seeds, winning the division. But this was a very fun podcast. Obviously, we were able to talk about Dwane Casey and the senior advisor, discussing Jalen Duren. Let me know what you guys think of that video and that conversation, because I like the fact that he said hopefully, like something in my brain is like, okay, that's kind of weird. Why would you use the word hopefully with Jalen Duren? Let me know what you guys think of the letter grades from the Athletic. Pistons got a B in it. JB Bickerstaff making Team USA as an assistant coach, and possibly, shouldn't even say possibly, Cade Cunningham will have an invite if he accepts it, but I'm pretty sure he will accept it. He wants to go play for his country and bring home a gold medal, which I think they have a pretty good chance to, because Team USA's rosters are always stacked. Bleacher Report's top 30 players in 2030. Cade being 7, which I think you could definitely have a conversation, at least top 5. I mean, he finished like what, 5th in MVP voting. I know over the next 4 years he's going to kind of slip in production and be regarded as the 7th best player of the NBA. I still think over these next couple of years he's just going to get better with his game. 3-point shot will probably develop a little bit more. But I'll talk to you guys down below in the comments section. Like always, hope you guys are staying safe, staying cool out there. We got a couple more 90-degree days on the way. And always, go Pistons, you guys. Peace.